everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, you're looking quite nice this evening.
Oh, why, thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
Well, is it kind of me to say that really you should have ironed your shirt?
I beg your pardon.
So we're going to be talking about the difference between being kind and being nice. And this relates to the chivalric virtue of courtesy, which is often misunderstood as kindness or niceness or even etiquette. And so we're going to talk about those. Um, but first, I please kindly tell me, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, I'm in the process of restocking our cabinet, but I found in the back a bottle of my um, favorite brand of peppermint schnapps. It
No.
is a um,
Ugh.
101 is a Viking 101 blue ice, and it's I discovered it in Pennsylvania
Hmm.
during one of our week-long camping events that we go to, and I've realized it's the only place I can get it. So every year when I go back, I buy a couple of bottles, and I thought I was out of it, but I was down to one bottle, and I was glad to find it. And I did not have the horrible experience of peppermint schnapps that many of my high school contemporaries did. So I still enjoy it. This is a nice, not too sweet, not too much sugar. It's a nice minty, fresh, clean, the little ice. Mwah.
I can see it as a mixer, but man, it's like cough medicine to me. So
Well, I mean, I ice it quite a bit too,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's. I like to keep it cold, but it waters it a little bit. It's not as thick.
Okay.
But, and what's your beverage of choice this evening?
Well, this,
Oh, it's a lovely color, isn't it?
thank you. This is a new cocktail I created, one of two. The first one I created, which is not, was I told you so.
All
This
right.
is I told you so again.
Okay.
So it has bourbon for regret. It has ginger liqueur and hot honey syrup for the heat of the shame you should feel because I'm telling you again.
Okay.
It's got lemon juice for the tartness of my
Of your
comment.
response. Yes.
It's got cranberry bitters, hence the color, for the bitterness that you should feel of being wrong.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
This is retribution in a glass, it sounds
This,
like.
and this is the second version. I'll introduce the first version once I tweak it to my
Okay.
satisfaction.
All right.
So so here's I told you so.
You know, you well, okay.
What?
I was gonna say if there's retribution there, there's like vengeance is supposed to be served cold. I would think that you'd want to like shake it with
I
ice at least.
I did. It's chilled.
Oh, okay, very good.
It's the chill of my icy comment.
Okay, got
It's
it.
cold. Yeah, it's
Okay,
chilled. So there
all
you
right.
go.
So you wanted to start with a short discussion of courtesy.
Yes. So I think that's necessary to
Ooh, ooh, ghostly green
so
filaments in there.
I think it's necessary to set the baseline in terms of the virtues. And we've talked about courtesy a lot, and courtesy coming from courtoisie or courtliness, the manners, the rules, the process, the attributes, the way of being that you are expected to have to be able to be present at court. And
Right.
court, not meaning legal court, but court meaning the royal court. And I'm gonna have to gesture less or
Yeah.
something.
Well,
Um,
and I think of court in terms of civilized society, right?
yes,
From
and
a modern
yes,
standpoint.
yes. And so there are rules, and we've talked before about the rules of courteous discourse. You don't, it's and which are often succinctly summarized by the aphorism, "A gentleman never insults anyone unintentionally,
Right.
or never offends anyone unintentionally." Um, that it's about courtesy is about respect for yourself and for others.
Hmm.
It's a way of, in the rules of courteous discourse, you don't raise your voice, you don't call names, you stick to the subject. Um,
You do
you,
not intend to deceive.
yes. So there are certain rules to follow, and that's courtesy, and that's why it's considered a virtue, chivalric virtue. It was necessary for the lubrication of society, right? The when the warrior class, the knights, the chivalry, were had to be civilized. So when they were not at war, so they would
Right.
be able to exist in polite society, there were certain rules that had to come up with and had to be developed, evolved for a society, and that's became known as courtesy, the rules of courtesy. Courtesy in the modern world is often confused with etiquette, and etiquette
Or
is
politeness.
yes, and those are different. Um, uh, Etiquette is a specific set of rules in a specific kind of social situation,
Right.
and it's those are different. Those vary widely. A formal white tie and tails state dinner has certain
Right.
etiquette, protocol, diplomatic protocol etiquette that are people are expected to follow. Um, um, what was the other? Polite. Politeness
Politeness.
is politeness, I think, is is social behavior that people are, again, it's an expectation. It is not necessarily courteous discourse. You are not necessarily engaging in conversation with people, but it's simple things like don't cut in line and
Right. Yeah.
and
Well, it's also, I think, behavior that wishes not to offend.
yes.
And
So
that's
let people off the
all.
elevator before you get on. Don't crowd
Right.
the door. When you get off a moving walkway, like in an airport or an escalator, don't just stop there. If there are people, keep
Right.
going.
Right. It's like in a car wash. Keep going.
Right,
Just, geez,
right.
man.
Don't there's rules of the road. Don't be a left lane hog. Don't you do use your turn signals to indicate lane changes and so on. Things,
Hmm.
and those are considered polite. And so um so I think that's but not etiquette like which fork do you use and which is what etiquette often has become. And there are, to the extent that there are extensive books about that
Yeah,
sort of
right.
thing. Um, I thought that is necessary or useful at least to set the baseline for what we're going to talk about, which is kindness versus niceness, being kind versus being nice.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And I found this graphic, and you found a couple of additional ones that tries to sort of lay it out side by side.
yes.
And to relative success, I think. Um, we can show, can we put one of those up on the screen
Um,
for everybody, or do
I
you want to
th-
just include them in the comments if
I
people want to look?
I think Um, since this includes the credit of the creator of this, I will share it because includes the
Oh,
creators.
website.
Did that, is it
Yep,
not?
I can see it.
Okay. Okay, good.
So,
Um, so this, let me see, here we go. There we go. And if you want more information about this, the author, creator of this is down below, and so credit to him. Um, and I think this was easy, easy, useful uh, summary of this that um, nice is easy and kind is right. Now, I don't completely agree with everything in this. I do think that the most important thing he says here is in the right upper right. He says kindness, speak the truth, but do it with compassion. Nice softens every critique, tries to do things, doesn't want to hurt people's feelings, wants to say what people want to hear, does anything to avoid conflict. So I think, and we've mentioned this before, that when people talk about being brutally honest, they are
right.
often emphasizing the brutal part rather than the honest part. And I think that it's important to remember that honesty can be compassionate honesty.
Well,
Um,
one should always endeavor to be compassionate, right?
yes.
Until you're in an actual adversarial situation. I like that in this graphic that all of the yellow and blue things in this sort of pyramid um, have he's called them out to a versus. Oh, wow, I've got messages coming in here. Um, Integrity versus conformity. Those comparisons I think are good.
Yes.
Having that vocabulary, sincerity versus flattery. Usually, the kind thing is actually useful, and the nice thing is just non-confrontational.
Yes. Well, one of the other things I found said that kindness is an action concerning
Okay.
an action of empathy and compassion towards other people, whereas niceness, it focuses on what's easier for the person, the me. Kindness, I'm focused on the other person, and niceness, I'm focused on me. I don't want to offend. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to. It's
Well,
protective. I think that people who are nice rather than kind are there's an element of fearfulness in that.
perhaps, and that may have been something that was instilled at a young age,
Yes.
um, where conformity, that's in there somewhere too, integrity versus conformity,
Yes.
where conformity was the rule. It doesn't matter, do as I say, stop complaining, I'll give you something to cry about. That kind of environment could lead someone to just wanting to be nice. As I mean, that might be a positive response rather than simply being combative all the time.
Well, yeah, but it's also either of those being
Yeah,
overly combative or being overly compliant.
compliant. Yeah, yeah.
Both of those are trauma responses.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think if you can it's easier to be kind if you've either A, gotten through a trauma in a healthy way, or or are not or have not had to deal with that kind of trauma.
Yes. Well, I think that um, um, it I come back to the virtues as we often do.
Hmm.
A lot of the virtues, and we talked about how they're founded on courage and honesty.
Yes.
And we've gone back and forth about which is the essential. It takes courage to be honest with yourself about yourself, but you have to be honest to so I think that if people haven't, just like the um, uh, steps of a an apology,
Uh-huh.
you can't, the steps have to be done in order. You can't skip them. The virtues have to be, there has to be a baseline of a certain amount of courage to be
Yes.
honest with yourself about yourself if you are going to then have the strength to not simply be a conformist, um, to be kind and to be compassionate. The people who are least compassionate uh, are are well, it's somebody who is rude or cruel needlessly or lacks compassion. Um, it's not just a trauma response, it's insecurity, it's a fear. Like people who are uh, who come across as arrogant, it's usually an reflects an insecurity.
Right. It's defensive.
Right. So to um an example, if your spouse asks you what you think, there you're going to go out, you're going somewhere, and what would you think if I wore this? And right?
Right.
Well, you don't have to be insulting. You can be compassionate, but it does no good to just say, "Oh, you look great." Vague
If
praise
if they don't, I
if they
mean,
don't. Um, um, I mean, our spouses always look great in
well,
whatever they do,
naturally.
right? But to say, I think that this is not your best look. This you
Right.
could this I would suggest, or
I don't think this thing
this
goes
fits
with that.
with that,
Right.
or this occasion, or so it also requires practice and work to do this. Um, I think another example is something in teaching where, and we both learned in critique and teaching is very similar. You start with something, saying something positive
Right.
about it. And then you say, well, here are the positive things. Now, here's how it could be better.
Here's how
Um,
I think it could be better.
yes. And and here are the reasons why that would be better.
Right.
Um,
Now, I think there's also in the example you cite with your spouse, I think that there's also a certain
Not my
amount of
spouse because she always looks perfect. So,
right. Um, with and with my spouse as well, but I mean with a spouse, with a
yes, a
rhetorical
generic
hypothetical
spouse. Yeah.
spouse, yeah.
I'm
Um,
gonna stop sharing this for a moment while we're,
okay. I
yes.
think we get into there's also an element of trust that you
Yes.
have built up by being honest and kind,
Yes.
right? That our spouses might ask us that because they actually trust us to give them a constructive, real answer.
Yes.
They don't expect from us, certainly don't expect mere flattery, nor do they expect us to make them feel bad about their choices.
Right.
So having built that trust helps you to be in the right place to be kind.
And trust is is earned, and
Yes.
it's based on honesty. Trust, as I've said before, is the essential thing that the company needs to do business with a person, vice versa. Anyone needs to do to have to do any kind of transaction. But I think it's social interactions as well. If
Yeah.
you don't trust that the person will be as good as their word, will be say what they mean to say, are being honest with you, there's no basis for a relationship, either an economic relationship, a personal relationship. I heard someone once, 'cause the word honor gets used a lot, and somebody said, "Well, what defining what honor is?" And they said to them it meant you are as good as your word. If you say
Mhm.
something, you will do something, you will do it. If you say this is what you think, it is what you think. You are as good as you're trustworthy, and that means you're honorable. That they equated the two, and I thought
It's
that
certainly
was,
I'd say it's certainly an element.
yeah, I think it is an element. Um, I think it's a important element of it, but so I think that um, I think the um, but that kind of trust is earned. And so to be kind in that way of honest yet compassionate requires a level of trust, both from the person asking, but the person giving too. If somebody I don't know asks me what I think about something, they ha they haven't necessarily earned the right to my
Oh,
thoughts.
no, true. I mean, we've both been in sales. And when
Yeah.
somebody picks up an item and says, "Do you think that?" I mean, we both worked in men's clothing,
Yes.
so I felt compelled. I felt it was part of my job to give an honest evaluation of whether or not something
Yes.
suited someone, pun intended, um, or nope, I don't think that's your best, as you said, that's not your best look.
Yes.
Here, let me show you. Let me help you find this thing.
Well, and I think that offering of help as the next step of it is significant. Uh,
Yeah,
that you're not simply offering uh, criticism without meaning. Um, you're not simply offering criticism without help. And we've
right.
talked about that when we've talked about the critique process, that you're pointing out what works, what doesn't work, and not simply saying it's terrible. And you know,
There's also a certain in the example I was citing. There there's an assumption of expertise too. That
yes,
they've asked you for help because you're presenting yourself as someone who knows something about the subject. And if they ask, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Well, here's what I think of it, but that's just what I think of it.
yeah,
I mean, unless you're
um,
expressing an expert opinion on something, which is a whole other thing.
yes,
Courtesy is not, then you have a sort of a professional ethic kicks in,
yes.
and you don't, being nice, being kind, being compassionate isn't necessarily called for from a professional. I think,
Well, I think actually I think I think one of the problems in the modern world is that a lot of professions don't think they need to be kind and courteous. Um, and that Um, but I think they deal with a lot of customers or clients who are also not kind and courteous. And so
That's
I think
likely, yeah.
I think that it so if somebody if whichever side of the transaction you're on, let's say you're a customer and you are rude to the salesperson or professional, it's not reasonable to expect that they are going to be kind or even nice in return. But a lot of people have that. They say that the customer is always right, which is
A
a
misquote, an incomplete
misquotation.
quote, an
Yes.
incomplete quotation.
In matters of taste, the customer is always right. But actually I've had clients who's had no taste.
No, right. Absolutely.
So so or their taste was irrelevant. And
Right.
I've said it before, presenting something many years ago to a client who said, I don't like it. And I said, I understand that, but you are not your customers,
Right.
and your customers will like it. It will work. They will like it. You are not your customers. You don't have the same needs. You don't have the
Right.
same wants. You are not in the same situation. This will speak to them. You don't have to like it. You, sir, need to understand that this will work to accomplish what we agreed on was what we
Right.
wanted to accomplish.
And
And
the idea, the point that is, the sort of overriding point is, you hired us because all you had to do is what you wanted. You didn't
right,
need us.
right.
You've come to us because we can increase your sales or your
Yeah.
market share or whatever. So you hired us to do the job. We're doing the job. You should let us do the
Yes.
job.
The when I would do things like that, the account executives would freak out
Yeah.
because they were more concerned with being nice, with being people pleasers, with giving whatever the client asked for. The client, it, as long as the client's happy, that was the thing.
Well, yeah,
My ghost is gone now. Oh,
oh,
that's good.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, their motivation was just to get that commission check.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
weren't actually trying to serve the client. They were
Yes.
just trying to land a commission.
Yes. And those kinds of salespeople could be selling anything. It didn't matter to them.
Yep.
Whereas those of us working in the creative end of things were absolutely committed to doing it well and doing it right and being effective and not simply pleasing the client, but doing the right thing for them.
Well, and it's a longer view too, because other potential clients will look and see whether or not your work is effective,
Yes.
right? If you just give somebody what, they think they want and it fails, that reflects on your professionalism as much as anything else.
Yeah, they will ultimately blame you. Well, why didn't you tell me this?
Right.
They'll hold you
Sure.
responsible for it. Um, so I would say in that situation, in those professional situations, niceness is counterproductive.
Oh, yes.
Kindness, kindness coupled with honesty and compassion, which all put together is a kind of professional courtesy, a
Hmm.
phrase I've heard before. Those actually are more effective in the long run. Stephen Covey, in his Seven Habits of Successful People, the some useful stuff in there, although it cracked me up that he would like trademark or copyright every other word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but he did say some useful things, and one was distinguishing between efficiency and effectiveness.
Right.
And that efficiency, it's get it done no matter what. And we've known people like that who full steam
Yep.
ahead, take no prisoners, get it done, no matter what the consequences. You accomplish the
Yep.
goal. Effectiveness, the difference in a professional setting, I would say, is you can be very efficient. You can get it done. It can accomplish what you want. And a client will say, it accomplished everything and I never want to work with you again because it was such an awful process. Whereas effectiveness, the client will say, hey, there were a few bumps along the way, but next time we'll do these things because it was a great process and it was great collaboration and we learned from it and it'll, and that's, do you have a short term or a long term mindset? And that relates to niceness versus kindness.
Well,
The short term is I just I don't want to rock any boats. I don't want to offend anybody. Kindness is you're building a long-term relationship.
and not to mention what effect that efficient versus effective has on a team
Oh,
that's
yeah.
doing the work,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, you can be efficient and you can just, hammer on everybody to get it done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Or you can bring the team along on this process and everybody takes a certain amount of investment in their part of the job and the job gets done better. Whether it
Yes.
takes a little longer, but often not,
Yeah.
because there's no, if you've got the team moving along with you, there's no resistance.
Yes.
And that's
I,
an aspect of inefficiency.
it is. And that a well-functioning team is more efficient as well as effective. And it's funny because I just watched an episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, the animated series about the ensigns in the lower deck,
Right?
and it was about that. The captain gets on a tear about rigid
Efficiency.
schedules and efficiency, and the ship falls to pieces, and then relaxes it, and the ship starts working great. Everybody starts working great again. So, um,
Well, and if you're bringing your, it's better to be kind to your team, right? Even when you have to criticize or correct,
yes,
than it is to be nice. Because
yeah,
if you just say, no, that's fine, no, whatever, it may not be. It,
yes,
it, it could be ineffective. They could be failing at what they're doing, but you don't want to hurt their feelings or whatever. Rather than mentoring and helping them along and bringing them up to speed, so to speak,
hmm.
it's like you say, it's counterproductive.
I had a junior designer who reported to me at one point, and this was back in the day when we were making really elaborate proposal documents,
Hmm.
multiple copies, really elaborate covers and contents and
Right.
fully designed things. And she had an idea, and I said, prototype it. Build one quickly first to make sure what you have in mind will work. Oh, okay. She didn't. I said, have you prototyped it? I'll do that. If she's in assembling the deliverables, has not prototyped it, it's not working.
Yeah.
The rest of the team is freaking out because it's not working. And I'm just standing there. I, I said, I know how to fix this, but I have to let her feel this panic so she will never repeat this mistake. And she was didn't know what to do. I said, okay, this feeling right now of absolute panic and terror that you're feeling, I want you to remember this. And when I say prototype things and follow the process, make sure it's going to work before you commit everything to it. That's what you're going to do, isn't it? Yeah, and so she remembered, and I knew how to fix it because I'd encountered the same thing
Uh-huh.
myself years before, and so I fixed the thing because it wasn't she didn't understand the mechanics of making a binder of things. Anyway, I solved it. I fixed it. It went out the door. It was fine. Um, but everybody, I said I knew what I was doing. Some people have to learn that way, and she had to learn that way. And so
So in the end, that was being kind,
it
because
was
nice would have been just to take it out of her hands and do it for her,
for right.
but that would not have taught her the lesson she needed for
No,
future.
exactly, exactly. So I guess that's an example of what you've said about me that I was always a teacher. So
Hmm.
yeah, the transition from actually working in that kind of agency setting and teaching and mentoring direct reports and colleagues and clients to teaching in a classroom was not that difficult a transition for me.
I, I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah. It was just
So
a different way of organizing the information. So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, you still have to deliver a thing. You have a
yeah,
product, and that product is knowledge.
yeah, yeah.
You've still got to package it.
Well, yeah, and that's an interesting because you're not delivering a package of knowledge. You are leading them to discover a process. And
Well,
that's the
yeah,
way you know, and yeah, there's content along the way because they have to have content with which to practice the process on.
yeah.
Right, and that's why when it always pisses me off when people say, "Yeah, you're never going to use trigonometry again. You're never going to use algebra." Well, actually, there are applications for it, but that's not the point. The point is you're learning how to think,
Right.
and you're
Yeah.
learning how to think in a very specific way. Learning geometric proofs is a very specific way of learning how to think about things. And
Right.
that's what you're learning how to do.
Well,
So,
and you're learning different ways of thinking. Like your
yes.
math class, yeah, I've never really used my trigonometry. I didn't really get it when I was learning it. And I haven't really used it much since, but I find myself still being able to think of how to balancing an equation
Yeah.
is still something you have to do, not just with equations.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, trying, remembering theorems and aphorisms and things like that that
Yeah.
you can apply to different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just getting a bunch of facts in your head. It's about learning how to approach a problem and occasionally having to back up and find a different way to approach a problem.
Exactly. Yep.
So yeah, the whole move of let's just get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, no, that's you should have figured that out by the end of third grade.
Yeah. Let's let's go back to society that was 90% agrarian
Yeah,
and
and 50% illiterate.
yeah. Yeah, because that's a great way to compete in the modern world. Yeah. Let's ban books. Let's not allow the introduction of any topic that makes students uncomfortable.
Or even worse, let's make
In
the parents
college,
uncomfortable.
make the parents in college. No, you're supposed to be confronted with uncomfortable ideas, with different ways of thinking. Just because you're exposed to an idea doesn't mean you end up having to agree with it.
Right, and hearing something that you don't agree with isn't trauma.
Right.
But we're getting a little off the subject here.
Yeah.
Not that we've ever done.
That never happens. Right. It's all
So,
related. I'm sure it's happened to you as well, where you'll be talking about one thing and then quiet for a minute, and then you'll say something that seems like completely out of out of left field.
Right.
And well, how did that come up? Well, this thing made me think of this other thing, which made me think of this other thing, and this other, and so on. And then I thought of this, and that's why I said that. And yeah, I think that's a common experience for a lot of people. It's not a universal experience necessarily, but it's common for a lot of people who's have a very busy
Well,
inner life.
it's associative thinking too,
Yes, yeah.
right? You you can have an imagination. You can think about more than one thing at once. You don't have to follow one thought till its terminus before you can change and look at something else. It's
Well, there's a difference between linear thinking and divergent thinking. And
okay,
linear, where, as you said, it's one thing following it directly to the terminus. Divergent, you're exploring multiple options, pathways, and eventually coming to something. But it can lead you in a different direction.
right.
And I mentioned this before. I was coming out of years ago out of a brainstorm meeting with it was an account executive, and he said, "Oh, that was terrible." I said, "What do you mean terrible?" He said, "I just wanted to pick something and do it." I said, "Honestly, that's great. I'm energized. I love that where we're kicking around ideas and going back and forth, and finally we come up with something that's better, more innovative, more effective than any one person would have come up with on their own." He
Right.
said, "Yeah, I hate that." I said, "Well, that's why you do what you do and I do what I do."
That's right. The thinkers will figure this out and they will hand it to you, the doer, to
Yeah,
just go do it. Now that all the thinking's been done, you can go work.
I did develop was exposed to different named thinking processes,
Mhm.
which I thought were interesting, that they were essentially the same, but had different names for things. So I did a comparison chart showing, okay, here are these different thinking systems, and here's what they call these stages. Here's how they relate. But the commonality in a lot of these was that there was a critical thinking, creative thinking, critical thinking phase.
Oh,
The
okay.
critical thinking was gathering information, and the creative thinking was what you do, how you rearrange and draw on sources and come up with multiple possible solutions. And then the critical thinking phase was analyzing these to pick one with the greatest likelihood of success and then going forward.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Testing against a virtual model.
yes, which you start in the beginning. So, yep. Um, so, um,
So to sum up,
to sum up,
kind
yes,
is more productive and better than being nice in
yes.
general.
If it
Um,
is kindness with compassion and honesty,
well,
which
and I'm
is
seeing
in,
compassion and honesty go into being kind. That is part of the
yes,
definition
yes.
of being kind.
Whereas, and it's about the other person and helping, being useful, helpful in a relationship with that other person, developing one with the other person. Whereas nice is protective, self-oriented. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to get in trouble. And
Well, and I think
yeah,
kind also, as you're, I think, alluding to somewhat, that kind also is a self-respective stance also,
yes,
that you can be kind while maintaining your own integrity.
yes, which
So
is important.
yeah, if you are going to maintain self-respect,
Yep.
if you don't have integrity, how can you respect? I can't respect anyone else who doesn't have integrity. How could I respect myself if I don't?
Well, and that comes back to the trust thing.
Yep,
That is the definition of integrity. Somebody is as good as their word, and like
yep.
one definition of honor. So,
Well, and that was actually before we close. That was something that I thought of while we were talking about that. That it's not honor, right? Is not just being um, good as your word, or that
Right.
when you say something you'll do it. But there's an expectation, an honorable person. There's an expectation that they will not take advantage unduly, that
Yes.
they will not sacrifice you or a principle for their gain.
Yes. That's the other, that's an important aspect of it. It was not a complete definition, but it was
Right.
a useful partial definition. But
Before we
yeah,
left, I just wanted to complete that.
thank you. I'm glad you did. Yeah.
So, so
Yeah,
that's, I think, where we need to be for the purposes of this kind versus nice discussion.
I think so.
It's been very kind of you to show up for this evening's discourse.
I told you so.
Oh, boy, that would have been a good place to end. But we
Yeah.
can't end there. Where we
Okay.
have to end is, as usual, be thou
A good night.
and true.